Wanted to give you a little bit of practice here on sound devices in poetry, since we haven't talked a lot about that, and your only exposure has been to our poetry terms in our Quizlet deck. I thought that I would take one of my favorite Broadway musicals, recent Broadway musicals, and use that to kind of break down sound devices in poetry, because musicals are filled with songs which are basically poems. So I figured this is a great way for us to go through it. Just to give you a quick background on Hamilton, it basically chronicles the life of Alexander Hamilton, one of our forefathers, and it really is a phenomenal musical. In fact, I will be sharing with you later on this week a link to one of the songs in the show, not this one that we're working on, but another one. It'll actually be part of your test on Friday, so I'll be encouraging you to listen to it. But we're going to take this one and use it as an example, so that way you've got something to work with or go by when you're doing your sound device activity that you're graded on today or this week. So let me give you a little bit of background on Alexander Hamilton. This particular song opens the show, and this would be, I think, the third or fourth verses in the song. But we're going to call them stanzas because songs are poetry, and for the sake of analyzing this, we'll call them stanzas. And it chronicles his life in the Caribbean. It was considered the British West Indies back in the 1700s, but for the sake of your knowledge of geography, think of the Caribbean islands. That's where he was born, and his life was crap. It really was a struggle for him, and that's kind of what made him who he was. He wasn't about to let anything or anybody bring him down, and these two verses right here capture a little bit of what it was like when he was in the Caribbean. So I'll read it for you. I will not do it justice like it will on the YouTube videos if you listen to some of the the show that way, but you have to hear this out loud to really pick out sound devices. That's why poetry is meant to be read out loud. So listen carefully, because these are the things that we're going to be focusing on: consonants versus alliteration, assonance versus rhyme, internal rhyme, and then rhyme scheme / couplet. And every day, while slaves were being slaughtered and carted away across the waves, he struggled and kept his guard up. Inside, he was longing for something to be a part of. The brother was ready to beg, steal, borrow, or barter. Then a hurricane came and devastation reigned. Our man saw his future dripping down the drain, put a pencil to his temple, connected it to his brain, and he wrote his first refrain, a testament to his pain. So yeah, rough life in the Caribbean. So what we need to do is we need to take a look at all of these different sound devices. And again, sound is used in poetry to emphasize, just like figurative language is used in poetry to emphasize. What it emphasizes is usually message, a particular image, a concept to get across. So let's start breaking this down a little bit, okay? First, consonants versus alliteration. The best way to think about it is alliteration is always a type of consonants. Consonants is the greater category, the more broad category. So consonants is a repetition of consonant sounds in a line of poetry. And that consonant sound could be at the middle of the word, it could be at the beginning of the word, it could be at the end of the word. Alliteration, you guys know this one quite a bit from nursery rhymes and tongue twisters, is always the repetition of a consonant sound at the beginning of the word. So let's take a look at consonants first, okay? If we go to line 2 of stanza 1, across the waves he struggled and kept his guard up. You have a repetition of consonant sounds: across, waves, struggled, and you can even check his if you want to, but really when you're talking about consonant, you want to look at the important words and what sounds are being repeated there. So over here we can go ahead and put down that there is consonants, repetition of S. And why that's important, we'll maybe talk about that here in just a couple minutes, okay? Now, alliteration, I think, is a little bit easier to pick up because we're looking at what stands out to us. Clearly, beg, steal, borrow, or barter. And you even have brother here. The brother was ready to beg, steal, borrow, and barter. So you've got, in this case, alliteration. Repetition of B. And then we have, and then a hurricane came and devastation reigned. Now let's start looking at assonance versus rhyme and the difference between those two. Okay, when it comes to assonance and rhyme, and maybe we'll jump back up here and tear some things apart some more in stanza 1. But when you're talking about assonance and rhyme, assonance sounds like rhyme, but it's not quite rhyme. And rhyme is exact. So when the second half or the ending of a word rhymes with another, that means that it's going to sound exactly the same. Assonance is where you get a repetition of a vowel sound. So not consonants, but vowel sounds. And so it sounds like things almost rhyme. Modern rap uses what they call approximate rhyme, and it's usually when it comes to assonance. It's incredibly popular in modern poetry and rap today, and even in song lyrics, in general song lyrics. And that's why we see a lot of this in Hamilton, because there is a lot of rap in it. So let's take a look here. When it comes to assonance, let's look at lines 1 and 2 of stanza 1. We have, and every day while slaves were being slaughtered and carted away. We've got 3 words there: day, slaves, and away. We have in there assonance, and that's the repetition of the long A sound, where you have day, slaves, and away. And we even have rhyme in that case too, because we have slaves and away, and that's where I want to kind of make a reference to this internal rhyme, that you can have words that rhyme with each other within one line of poetry, and that's a great example of it. And then if we want to carry this down into stanza 2, you have across the waves, he struggled and kept his guard up. So now you have day, slaves, carted away across the waves. When you have that continued assonance, it helps to link these images together. So again, when we talk about sound, this is always to emphasize some sort of image or message in the poem. So you have carted away across the waves. Where were slaves carted away? Obviously, they were taken across the ocean over to the United States. So that gives you, in that case, the colonies, it gives you a good idea of how sound is used. All right, so now let's take that. I'm going to use waves again. We're going to edit this. Assonance of waves with line 1. And now let's start talking about the significance of this, okay? So it emphasizes the image of where slaves were taken from homeland across ocean to colonies. So there you go. That gives you an opportunity to kind of explain why the sound is being used there. Same thing here, alliteration, brother, beg, borrow, barter. If we want to explain the significance of that, emphasizes what Hamilton was willing to do to survive. And now there's where we get our explanation, okay? Finally, rhyme scheme and couplet. And I can't help but obviously bring up the repetition there too. Our man saw his future dripping down the drain. Again, it just emphasizes how devastating everything is at that point for him. Oh, and I have to bring this up too. Pencil to his temple. Again, great example of assonance. I like that example right there. So now let's talk a little bit about rhyme scheme and couplet. Here's where we can talk about approximate rhyme again, where we have reigned and drain. So here, rained, drain, different endings, but we have that long AIN sound coming across, and that's approximate rhyme, that's assonance, but we can count it as a couplet. We can count that as rhyme scheme. And then we have brain and pain. We can put that down, rhymed couplet. Because in that particular case, we have two words that end the lines within a stanza. They're paired up, and in that particular case, it's helping us to see that these two lines should be read together. And that's where there's emphasis once again. Put a pencil to his temple, connected it to his brain, and wrote his first refrain, a testament to his pain. And again, check this out. Refrain, pain, good example of internal rhyme. So if we go back to this and edit here, rhyme couplet plus internal rhyme, emphasizes his determination to write, think, work hard, record his struggles, and define who he is. Maybe writing his own history is another good way to think about it. And we'll save that one. All right, we've kind of torn this apart. Maybe, I don't want to say over torn it apart, but you guys are actually going to be pulling apart a popular children's poem this week. And you're going to have a ton of material to work with. Just like in here, there's a ton of material to work with. And I chose the children's poem just because, number one, it's a classic, and number two, it's kind of hilarious and fun, and I don't want you guys to take it so seriously. Enjoy it. If you've got younger family members, pull them into it, read it aloud to them, kind of have fun with it. But hopefully this little mini lesson kind of helped you guys out. I know this one was a little bit longer than the one from a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to give you guys something strong to work with. So, all right, feel free to come back and look at this at any given time. Again, this is what you're focusing on: consonants versus alliteration, assonance versus rhyme, internal rhyme, and rhyme scheme, specifically with couplet. All right. Good luck with everything this week, and I hopefully will see you guys for our live Kahoot, a little bit of competition in our Google Meet. Have a good one, folks.